If there's anyone that is the enemy of the gaming studios out here, the Access Media will try their best to gaslight you into believing that it's the players who are the ultimate threat that must be called to save video games, when in reality, it's the very same Access Media that has gone from being a voice for the people to shifting their focus to becoming the enemy of the very players they were meant to serve. Today I want to talk about Moon Studios, and later on circle back to that whole Kershaw controversy involving crime boss Rockay City, because that situation has escalated too, and this all will tie in nicely. But firstly, No Rest for the Wicked is Moon Studios' latest game. It's an early access action RPG that's combining Souls-like ideas with gorgeous art and a dark fantasy atmosphere. And the game has been met with acclaim despite it being an early access. But in the media's eyes, No Rest for the Wicked must be made an example out of and must be deconstructed, ridiculed, defamed, and hopefully destroyed because the CEO of Moon Studios, whose name is Thomas Mahler, doesn't get in line with the views and the ethics of the journalists who believe that it's their right to control the way that the stories in this industry are being told. And this is from Windows Central, and it's titled, Ori and the Blind Forest studio head says they could be forced to shut down due to the impact of negative Steam reviews for No Rest for the Wicked. So the gist here is that Wicked had a big update released for the game recently. It added a whole bunch of stuff but broke other things. These issues lasted for a while, and then players voiced their disappointment with these changes by review bombing the game on Steam. Thomas Mahler would then say this on Discord, and then it got spread everywhere pretty much, but here's what he said. I think people think I'm joking when I'm asking for positive reviews, because in people's minds there's always some big publisher in the background who will cover costs. Folks, if you're writing here and are enjoying Wicked and are excited for future updates but haven't left a positive review, it's entirely possible that we won't be around in a couple of months to do anything anymore simply because we got review bombed, which leads to people not buying the game, which means we're not making any money and we'll have to shut down. I wouldn't ask if our business wouldn't be dependent on it. I also never write reviews on anything, but if you want to see us actually finish Wicked, it's detrimental that we get that review score back up. So this Discord message got seen in a negative light, and I admit it doesn't exactly, at first anyway, come across for the best for Moon Studios. It sounds like Thomas Mahler is somewhat begging. However, credit where it's due, Moon Studios did release updates following that big patch, and then those updates have seemingly fixed the game's major problems and restored its Steam user score back to positive from negative. Thomas Mahler would further state his opinions, and here's what he said. Not sure people understand that they participate in potentially killing the studio they want to see succeed by leaving their negative reviews. I get that some people think that's the only way to reach out and get their voices heard, but even companies like Grinding Gear Games won't be able to stomach that review score forever. We had to take enormous risks to buy the publishing rights back. We've got a few months left in the oven. If we don't sell more copies because people review bomb us, you might just cause our death by leaving that negative review that you posted because you want us to listen to feedback, which we do anyway. I'm reading every single effing feedback that's being posted either way. Like I said, Thomas Mahler is notorious for being outspoken but not being unreasonable. The guy has made it very clear in the past that he is against consultancy agencies like Sweet Baby Inc. and has confirmed in the past that he actually got rid of consultants who were brought in initially to work on No Rest for the Wicked, because according to him, they were just bringing problems and trying to implement DEI into their game like they do everything else. He's been a very vocal supporter that games should not be political and should not be used as bludgeoning tools to beat players over the heads with. I wouldn't say that he's 100% a supporter of, say, Gamergate. I don't want to put those words in his mouth, but I do think it's safe to say that Thomas Mahler just thinks how the media treats games and hates players is bad for business and rejects it, which is a good thing, by the way, in my opinion, because I agree with him on that one. Games should be free of political stuff, as in real world things. I really don't need a fantasy world saying stuff like non-binary when such concepts would not exist in that world being said that way. At least make up a term in your fantasy world for non-binary that sounds like it would come from that world and not, I don't know, San Francisco instead. And we've seen many games be ruined by these ideologies, I don't need to tell you, and Thomas Mahler is clearly panicking because he wants his game to succeed for obvious reasons, but it brings us to another stark realization, which is that if No Rest for the Wicked were to fail and die, let's say, it would be a big boon not to the players, but actually the journalist types who want to make examples out of developers who push back against their agendas. Let me show you. This is from Insider Gaming. Anyone who doesn't include 5 trans characters, Ori Studio CEO defends closure comments. What Insider Gaming is referring to is Thomas Mahler's rant that he recently published on Twitter. And here's what Mahler said. This is what happens when the press just picks up Discord posts and writes an article around them. Overall, pretty much everyone who's tried Wicked after the last few hotfixes is extremely positive. The reason I left the post on Discord was simply to push back against some of the BS reviews. I've been hated on Twitter by a few crazies for years now. And I also saw the calls for review bombing because according to these folks, I'm a Yahtzee. These days, apparently anyone who doesn't include 5 trans characters in their game and doesn't let their products be influenced by political BS is a Yahtzee. What a world we live in when the Russia-Ukraine war broke out and I replied on Twitter saying that Moon Studios wouldn't be taking a public stance because we're a video game company, not a journalistic outlet. The next day, a threat letter with a picture of Putin was taped to my office door full of insults from top to bottom. Mahler would continue by saying, so I have no issue telling active players who love Wicked that they should go ahead and leave a positive review on Steam. After all, it's allowed on Steam to buy a game, leave a negative review that doesn't even talk about the game at all. There are negative Wicked reviews that literally just say nothing and then instantly refund it, and the negative review still counts. If that's allowed, then it should also be allowed for a developer to encourage their players to share their real experiences. And no, we're not in immediate financial danger, but from time to time, I think I'm allowed to speak up about issues within our industry I personally find unbecoming. We are continuing as always. Our goal is for every game Moon Studios creates to be an absolute masterpiece, and with Wicked, we're already on the way. We want our small 90-person company to push companies like Blizzard, GGG, and others to innovate by putting out products that are top quality and truly unique. We believe in competition, and we think players will win because of that. So yeah, let's go over this now. So Thomas Mahler, if you can't notice, he hates the Access Media, and I mean, who can really blame him when they're already taking his words out of context here? Like I said, that Insider Gaming article purposely chose to include his words on how his game isn't just full of trans people as the headline for a specific reason, and we know why. It is simply because they know by doing this, it will be a whistle to other developers who stand in line to voice their opinions against Moon Studios and Mahler because they don't believe that games should become political bludgeoning tools. And I think what Mahler has stood for here is right, because he hasn't really changed his stance, whether it was before, during, or after the Gamergate 2 stuff at all. He's been very consistent with his viewpoints that he thinks the media is evil and that players should be respected. And I find it very telling and alarming how the media, instead of celebrating or maybe amplifying Mahler's claims to bring unity to video games, they would rather use his own words against him to paint him as a bigot, a transphobe, and someone whose game and studios should not exist because they don't fall in line with the rest of them. So if you were wondering if No Rest for the Wicked would be some sweet baby infused game, no, it isn't at all. It doesn't push identity politics, it doesn't do anything like that. Because Moon Studios is not interested in pandering to the usual media types who think that body types over gender is a good idea and then some. But like I said, this is the exact sort of game that is going through a media cycle right now where the media wants this game to fail, or better yet, just die entirely. Because if Moon Studios were to fall apart and lose support and, eventually just close down, this would actually be music to these activists' ears because they would use it as a great example to other developers attempting to step out of line and go, you see what happens when you pander to those bigots, and then they can parade the corpse of Moon Studios around and ruin people's livelihoods only to install that, fear of God in anyone else who tries to not do what the industry wants. Because the truth is, while many won't admit it, I've spoken to developers who've worked on many of the games that you guys love and play. And believe me when I tell you that a lot of them think most of the people in this industry are literally insane and have drunk the Kool-Aid for a really long time. And that all the slop, the DEI nonsense, and let's push for representation at the expense of everything else, they find all of it to just be a cult. And that there's tangible fear and threats that you should not and will not step out of line ever in any of these Western gaming studios or else. So it's no surprise that Microsoft would push for a diversity consultant on every single video game being made under their wing in the past. And that is fact, by the way. Don't believe me? Well, here's the front page of Microsoft's diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is still up to this day that you could find. But what's really funny to me is that following a lot of games failing and then some, Microsoft has actually quietly started to close up parts of their DEI practices, as seen here in this article titled, Microsoft decides diversity no longer business critical, claims sacked manager. Pretty much, Microsoft begun removing parts of their programs after seeing that it wasn't working. Yet despite these concepts being axed to a degree, not fully mind you, but somewhat, you won't see these media types celebrating these types of business decisions. Instead, it will always be seen as problematic and wrong because to them, these ideas must be implemented no matter the cost of employment or the franchise prizes or even money, because the cause is what matters the most to them, and we know it's basically impossible to get hired by really any of these news sites unless you lean a certain way or believe specific things. And Moon Studio, by the way, as seen here in this report from GameIndustry.biz in March 2025, Moon Studios becomes fully independent after securing No Rest for the Wicked's publishing rights. The company now hopes to develop the action RPG without restrictions. That's key there, without restrictions. Oh, gee, I wonder what that might imply. Oh, right, they want to make their game without some overpriced DEI consultant, breathing down their neck going, why isn't that character this color? Where are all the female characters? Why aren't any of these people trans? You should add top surgery scars to the character development thing and more. And remember that Moon Studios' previous 2 games, which were the Ori games as seen here on screen, were published by Microsoft Studios. So No Rest for the Wicked is actually Moon Studios' first game where they don't actually have the monolith of Microsoft just breathing down their necks 24/7 while they make it. Look, I get it. Making a game is hard. I'm not saying that, but selling it is also probably even more difficult due to all the competition around you. And it really doesn't help when your game gets negative feedback, even if it's temporarily like Wicked did. But it also does these games no favor, which could kill a studio like this when Access Media suddenly decides to dogpile the game instead of, maybe helping them. Because for an industry that supposedly cares about helping and fostering inclusivity and be nice to everyone, they're very evidently not nice or caring if suddenly the development studio doesn't 100% align with their beliefs. Which is why I hope people do buy No Rest for the Wicked. I will definitely play and support the game when it eventually lands on PlayStation myself, because that's where I play games. Because these independent games made by people who don't hate you or want you to submit, I don't know, but I think they should be supported. And every time games like these do well, another blow will be to the monolith that wants everything to submit or die by their hands only. Oh, and by the way, let's circle back to what Thomas Mahler said earlier. He said during his rant that Moon Studios got major pushback for not supporting either Russia nor Ukraine during that whole thing. And some people in the industry found that problematic, but I mean, why? Why should Moon Studios have to align politically with 2 countries that, let's be real, have nothing to do with their game or their studio? Why at all, if you ask me, should any game studio really politically align with some other country during a war? I don't really need to know if this studio aligns with Ukraine or Russia, Palestine, Israel, and so on. You're making video games. You're not exactly sending your own troops to the front line, so why does this matter? Again, things like this are just political dick measuring contests designed to see who will fall in line. And here's a picture that Thomas Mahler took of Moon Studios' office where someone allegedly placed a picture of Putin on their studio wall here, saying that they were supporters of terrorism. Like, come on, dude. All of this because Mahler said his studio, which is making a video game set in a dark fantasy medieval setting, and that they want nothing to do with the politics or the wars that are going on in the real world. How insane is that? It would be like if back in the Afghanistan war days in like the early 2000s, you'd get your studio ransacked or something because your medieval fantasy game studio doesn't want to comment on the war. Like, what would it matter either, really? Like, let's be serious here. Come on. I'm not saying that Russian or Ukrainian or Palestinian and so on lives don't matter. No, but dude, they're a game studio. If you want actual troops and like financial support, you should go to your government or whatever, not a 90 developer dev studio making an action RPG. Like, this behavior is kind of insane to me. And again, it's another litmus test designed by the usual types just to determine whether you will fall in line or not with their ideals. Like, have we really reached the point where this becomes needed? Sadly, I would wager if you say you don't support any side in whatever war, that could cost you your Game of the Year nomination these days, or having your devs not invited to some award ceremony. Yeah, sure, you made an objectively great game, and you proved that smaller dev studios can deliver amazing cinematic experiences, but you didn't validate our political beliefs or say that Ukraine nor Russia is the right way to go. Like, this just sounds like parody, doesn't it? Imagine buying like ice cream, and the vendor just won't give you your ice cream that you bought unless you confirm which side of a war you're on. Like, dude, shut up, give me my food and leave me alone. Why does everything need to be this way? Can't video games just be video games? And this is what I mean. They want this game to fail. It has to die so that they can carve it for meat and then devour it until the next studio inevitably becomes their next prey. As this user said in response to Mahler's comments on how Access Media continues to try to destroy anything that wants to stay out of politics, here's what they said. This is precisely why trusted gaming journalism continues to erode. This comes comes across as completely disingenuous, and it's exactly this. As his other user replies to Mahler by saying, well, I enjoy your game very much, it's good to not get involved in politics, and you said it best, you're a video game company, and video game companies should stick to just that. And as you can see, Mahler just replies with 100% emoji, because that's how it should be. You're making video games, you're not in charge of the country, you're not the president, you're not a soldier shipping off to some land to fight some war. And I hate how the media continues to act like everything has to be this way when it really doesn't have to. And I find it disgusting that they've tried not once but many more times even in the past to paint Moon Studios in this negative light like they're bigots. All because they just want to, make a video game that people can enjoy and have fun with. But no, they're not pro-Ukraine after all. Well, they're also not pro-Russia, but you see that's a problem. Because if you're silent on these things that have absolutely nothing to do with your profession, product, or fan base, it means your silence is compliance, as the gaslighters would say. No, how about you just keep that nuclear political jargon out of video games entirely? Maybe that's relevant if the studio is set in Russia or Ukraine. But Moon Studios is not in those countries. They're in Austria, for God's sakes. Why can't the gaming journalism sphere be content that development studios just want to make fun games these days? And they don't want to fill their games with slop. The only reason is because they can't separate the two, and I mean the journalists. Because when you're in an eternal war of ideologies like this, it's the only way that you can really see things. Your brain is just constantly wired to think that way. But this really does nothing but muddy the waters further, and for context, here's what Mahler said about that Putin picture being taped to Moon Studios. He said, and if people don't believe me, here's what hung on my office door on the 22nd of April last year. It's not always fun to be a game developer. And this was done simply because we said that we'd want players from all over the world to be able to play our games. As you should be. You're making games. Doesn't matter who plays it and where. It's not your moral duty to fix the world or checklist every single person that wants to buy and play your game. And the fact that the journalists think otherwise, it tells you everything. I hope people do support this game, because if not, the Access media will definitely use it to damage the independent studios to not step out of line and think for themselves in the future, and you can bet on that. And this also ties into another story that I reported on earlier, but it all kind of comes together. But I made a video a few days back about Kersha, who's a VTuber that got attacked by Vice, and they have been trying since to cancel her and ruin her sponsorships because she's right-leaning, I guess. And then the game Crime Boss Rockay City cut ties with Kersha despite the fact that she saved their game by streaming it and building a community around it. Then the usual types who are pro-DI slop decided they would hijack Crime Boss and take it over from Kersha. So these new fans and content creators who were all the living embodiments of hallway monitors said stuff like this on Steam. Here's one of these new fans of Crime Boss. Here's what they said. Play this for free on PS5. It's a bit bigoted. They use the phrase candy ass, which is a gay slur. Also, the people of color are shown as caricatures that wouldn't be out of place in a racist 80s movie. Good job in-game studios, which makes Crime Boss, by the way. I hope you enjoy your new audience that you're clearly fostering here. That has, in record time, already claimed that your game is now bigoted, out of dated, and racist. Already, dude. This is the community that you will have in the future now. The same kinds of people who hold their bellies aching when you do literally anything that goes out of line with how they view things. Oh, you got a black character as a villain, or a woman is showing cleavage? Shame. Guess you're a bigot now. Great. So you went from having a fun community that was cool with the edgy jokes you had in your game to whatever this is now, and I hope you're happy. And here's another VTuber who also tried to cancel Kersha, and how do they think about Crime Boss as they played it and try to make it their own game? Well, here's what they think about it. Okay, so I've learned Crime Boss features Chuck Norris, who is homophobic slurs, caricatures of black people, misogyny, AI art. Is this why these people supported a crappy game and pretended to like it until the devs dropped Kersha? Is the bar so low for them? Wow, very cool. Every one of these people you are now pandering to in-game studios actually just hates your game, and they are canceling it already, and they also think that it's awful. So let me get this straight. You had it way better when Kersha was a part of you guys, right? Then you have people like this also who said, instant buy, really happy to see the devs stand against VTubers and similar brain rot content. Seriously, I never understand what's the appeal of males in their 50s role-playing as Japanese little girls. Nice to see at least some devs still have common sense. Since Payday 3 is trash, I soon gonna look into this game. It seems fun. But what makes this even funnier is that if you go look up this user's games that they play, oh, what's that? Look at this. Oh, they didn't even buy the game despite saying that it was an instant buy. That's your new audience in-game studios. As you can see, from No Rest for the Wicked and the whole Kersha controversy that's still ongoing even to this day, these types that claim that they care about games, yet they never support them, they only see the problems, and when it actually comes to games giving people what they want, the usual media types will instead just swarm and instead try to destroy anything that doesn't bend to their will, like Thomas Mahler and Moon Studios right now. If you ask me, this is it's not how things should be. Expunge the tourists, please, and support the great games that are out there. And I'm glad that Thomas Mahler spoke his mind against these media types, because they just want everything that they hate to die. And even if you do give into them like Crime Boss just did, they're still gonna find problems. They're still gonna hate you, and they're gonna want you canceled anyways. So what's the point, really? Stop doing this stuff. Stop catering to these people, and instead just make fun games that are devoid of political nonsense, and support the people who actually cared about you in the first place. But thank you for watching. Subscribe. Have a great day. I'll see you in the next one. Go play some video games, guys, preferably by people who don't hate you. And oh, by the way, we're still winning. Thanks for watching.